We will then cover, you know, our potential approach to the project or our planned approach to the project. And, you know, what are some of the givens that we're considering for this work? And we will review construction staging options, and we'll have questions and answers. And again, feel free to raise your hand and ask a question during the presentation, since the number of attendees is so small. So Heather, could you go to the next slide?
Yeah, I sure can.
Okay, so our project staff is, again, my name is Mike Nearing, and I'm the senior project manager, or a senior project manager in the City of Ann Arbor Engineering Department. Been with the city for quite a while. You've also met Heather Seifert. She is in our systems planning area, and she is a special projects manager and a public engagement specialist. You can see on the screen here our email addresses and our direct dial phone number with extensions. Feel free to reach out to us either way, and you know, we'll respond to any inquiries that come in. Next slide, please. So we're also very fortunate to be working with Vaughn Martin from Wade Trim and Carmel Tremblay, also of Wade Trim. Again, here's their email addresses, their contact information. So again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to reach out to Vaughn or Carmel, and they will help you to the best of their abilities. Next slide. Okay, thank you. So here we are, the project limits, as we probably already know, but I think it's good to revisit. So the project limits are Main Street between Huron and East William. We will also work along the side streets of Washington, Liberty, and East William, and the work will extend just east and west far enough to eliminate future work in South Main Street on any upcoming water main or resurfacing projects. In reviewing the past work and our future needs, excuse me, in reviewing the past work and future needs, we also determined it was necessary to extend the project limits north of Huron Street and south of East William in order to, again, keep any work out of South Main Street for the foreseeable future. So those are our project limits, and they've remained basically unchanged since the beginning of the project. So again, here's just an aerial view of the project limits. I think we're all familiar with it. Huron Street is here on the left, and William Street is on the right. And then this is just a kind of a closer view of that area. Next slide. So why are we doing this project? So it's necessary to replace this water main, as it's approximately 100 years old and it's at the end of its service life. Also, it has several what we term non-functioning valves, meaning like the valves, even though they turn, they don't really properly operate. So for example, the valves may not close all the way, or they may not open all the way, which means if there was a water main break out there, we probably would have a difficult time shutting the water off. Or if we needed to do an interconnection or other work like that, we would need special assistance in order to try and close the main. Also, what that means is there's probably a somewhat reduced firefighting capacity out there, but we've done some flow testing and whatnot, and we've ascertained that firefighting capacity is adequate out there as the main sits. But again, the water main's over 100 years old, or approximately 100 years old, and it definitely needs to be replaced. Also, as you all are painfully well aware, the surface of South Main Street is in quite poor condition, and as part of this work, we will resurface and renew the surface of the roadway. Next slide. So what are some of the elements of this project that we're going to be undertaking? So as I said before, we're going to replace the existing 8-inch water main that's approximately 100 years old. We're going to upsize the main to 12-inch. that meets or exceeds future needs. We're going to provide improved fire flow from new fire hydrants and improve fire hydrant coverage. There will be some periods of perceived inactivity in the work due to the necessary construction sequences. So there might be some days out there where it doesn't look like we're working in front of your building or in front of your store, but we are definitely working on the project. That will occur. We'll be replacing any galvanized water surfaces from the shutoff valve located in the sidewalk in front of the building to the water main. To the water main inside, to the water meter inside the building, excuse me. We will possibly be installing some new sanitary sewer leads in South Main Street to service buildings that are without proper public sanitary sewer services. There is a private sewer that exists in the alley between Ashley and Main that is servicing some of the buildings. And so we will make sure that each building has an appropriate number of functioning sanitary sewer leads. We'll also provide a new asphalt surface at the completion of the water main work, and we will ensure that all ramps meet all appropriate Americans with Disability Act requirements. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties tonight, and it's not advancing. Okay, there we go.
Okay, so here's a slide of our anticipated project timeline. And this has remained unchanged from our March 9th meeting. And I'm very, very happy to say that we are fully on schedule. We are meeting our milestone dates. And so our public engagement phase is here in this first line, and it's intended to extend from March of 2021 to October of 2021. We have begun the design phase, which is on line 2. That is expected to run from April through December of 2021. Early in 2022, we will work on creating the final contract documents and reviewing and getting the contract correct or right so that it has all the proper clauses in it to ensure timely performance by the contractor. We expect to obtain bids for this project in October of 2022. And then that will give us enough time to be able to hit the ground running in either late winter or very early spring of 2023. And so we will talk a little bit more about the duration of the project and some of the staging a little later on in the presentation. But again, this is the schedule. And again, to date, we've met all our milestone deliverable dates. Next slide. So what did we hear at our last meeting, and what did we hear during our 2 walk and talk sessions that we had earlier in the spring? So what was pretty clear was, relatively obvious. We need to minimize disruptions to the businesses. There was a slight preference of people that responded to the polling that was done by South Main Street, Ann Arbor. There was a slight preference to work in stages. There was also a slight preference not to work on weekends. People or business owners wanted to be apprised of planned water main shutdowns. Another question that arose was, will outdoor dining still be possible during the work? And how will construction impact the sidewalks, and or will the sidewalks be impacted, during the project's work? So those are some of the questions that we've heard so far. And I think we're in a good position to discuss them as this presentation moves forward. So a couple of things that we wanted to talk about tonight to let you know where we are in the design process and how things are going is we've come to the understanding that there are still existing trolley track foundations, concrete cast in place trolley track foundations in the center of South Main Street from here on all the way to William. So one of the things that we've been doing over the course of the last several days is you've probably noticed trucks out in the center left turn lane. We've been coring the pavement and the trolley track foundations. And we've confirmed that they're there. We confirmed that the concrete is still pretty sound. And we've got some preliminary readings on the actual ties in the trolley track foundations and what they're made of. And do they contain contaminated, or not contaminated, but do they contain, materials that would have to be disposed of in a landfill or not? So we've done some investigations on that. We have some preliminary information that I'll talk about as the presentation proceeds. We've also done some work reviewing the existing sanitary sewer leads, and we're not quite through, but we have ascertained that there are existing sanitary leads to virtually all the buildings. We're in the process of trying to determine the exact condition of each one of those leads. So we will conclude that work a little later this summer, and we'll report back on that. But so far, I would say the results look promising, which is good. We've also looked at the design of the water main and where we think we can fit the pipe in the existing roadway with all the other existing utilities that are out there. And then, really the heart of tonight's presentation is to talk about construction staging operations, kind of review those and go over some of the pros and cons of the two primary concepts that we've come up with. And so we're very interested in hearing feedback about that. So with regard to the trolley track foundations, this is a cross section of South Main Street from the mid to late 19 teens, like 1915 to 1920-ish or so. So Main Street was quite a bit wider than it is today, and so there were areas with brick pavers at the sides by the curbs on both sides. And then this is basically the center of South Main Street. And this area is about 17 feet wide. So it's the entire center left turn lane and then a little bit. So there's these concrete foundations that are out there. And there are white oak trolley ties that are made of 6 by 10 timbers. This concrete is about 2 feet thick. It's a little thicker in some places and a little thinner in others. And again, we've confirmed that these are out there. We've cored about a dozen holes through this foundation in several locations between William and Huron. And again, as I've said, the concrete is there. It's in fairly good condition. It seems fairly solid. And we've managed to grab a couple of cores through some of these railroad ties that the preliminary look at that seems to show that it's just untreated white oak, which again, we've yet to do laboratory testing to confirm this, but it seems like there's no creosote or other materials like wood preservative materials that would cause the timbers to have to be disposed of in a landfill, which is quite frankly good news. And so, but again, as I said, we're going to do more lab testing to confirm that from the pieces that we've retrieved. And so, as I said, we've performed soil borings and pavement corings to determine the extent and the condition of the concrete trolley track foundations. We'll probably have more solid information on that in about 2 weeks. I think it goes without saying that it's kind of difficult to work on. You can't work under this, and they're very difficult to work around. So one of the things that we're looking at is, do we need to basically dig this out of here and get rid of the whole thing? So that's something, again, we're currently studying, and we'll have more information on that in a few weeks. So about the sanitary sewer leads. So as I said before, we've investigated all known existing leads in South Main Street. We will televise the individual leads that appear to be unused in early July to determine their condition. And the reason that we're waiting is the funding that is available for TVing these in our maintenance budget is renewed on July 1st at the beginning of the new fiscal year. So once we have our fiscal or our financial authority or our obligational authority is the actual correct term, we will then go ahead and schedule that work. So I would think by mid-July, we will have these televised and we will have some better information on that. And again, as I said, from what we've seen so far, most of these appear like they're in good condition. The big question for us to find out is, A, are they truly in good condition? And B, how far do they extend laterally from the sanitary sewer? Or do they go, or do they work their way all the way out from underneath the pavement that exists today? Or were they just kind of stubbed out from the main? So that's what we're going to be investigating. And again, their condition to see, are they viable for future use? So, and if they're not viable or if they're not available, we will install replacement leads to outside the limits of the roadway to facilitate future use, so we don't have to come back, or someone doesn't have to come back and dig a hole in South Main Street that we just worked so hard to fix and repair. So the other, or the next most prominent design issue is, where is this water main going to go? So some of the things that we're considering are, where are the existing utilities that are in South Main Street? How can we avoid them? You know, where can we locate this water main to kind of make it more simple and straightforward to build? How long will each phase of the construction last? You know, obviously, the longer that each one of these segments are, the more work there is to do, thus the phase would be longer and would take more time. So another thing that comes into the final kind of major element of this is, where are the proposed connections of the new main to the existing main? Where will the new valves be located? And where would we put in fire hydrants, again, in order to ensure fire hydrant coverage that is consistent with the current city and state standards? So let's talk about a few of the givens relating to the construction, or things that we will do as part of this work. So I think the first thing that I want to say, and I cannot emphasize enough, is we will maintain pedestrian access on both sides of South Main Street during this work. So that, I think that hopefully that's as straightforward as it sounds. Patrons will be able to walk to and access your businesses or their apartments on the upper levels of the buildings. So we will maintain, and we are committed to maintaining pedestrian access at all times during the course of this work. So as I said, we will maintain access to all businesses. That is a given. One of the other things that we've come to determine during the course of the design process so far is that the roadway is too narrow to maintain vehicular access along the segment that's being constructed. So what that really means is, you know, the road is basically wide enough for the construction equipment and, you know, the work that has to occur. We don't have enough space to maintain vehicular access. So again, that's why maintaining pedestrian access in our mind is that much more critical. Also, there may be some limited times when sidewalk access may be reduced or detoured, and those would be for limited or shorter durations. Most notably, like if we're transferring water services, or if we need to replace a sanitary sewer service to a particular building. And what I would think, and probably what would happen, is we would, you know, narrow the sidewalk to maybe like 4 or 5 feet wide, so it's still ADA compliant to let people get in or around. That would be our goal. And as we progress a little farther in the design, you know, we'll be able to speak more clearly about that in the future. So there will be some scheduled water main shutdowns that will occur during this work. And again, we will schedule and inform you of these in advance. The city standard is to give businesses a minimum of 48 hours advance notice, and we will do that. We will try to provide additional notice or more notice if we can. And so again, that's something that we strive to do as part of excellent customer service. And then there will be some nighttime nighttime shutdowns that will be necessary in order to avoid impacting, say, some of the, like more water dependent businesses like restaurants and some other things like that. So we will have to schedule some nighttime shutdowns to do some of that work. And again, we will try to minimize those, and we will try to do that with plenty of advance notice so that everyone understands what's going on. So again, those are some of the givens that will apply to this project. So here's a slide here's a series of 3 slides that we created that I recognize that this is kind of small on your screen. And again, we will share a copy of this presentation, post it to the project webpage tomorrow, where you'll be able to zoom in on these screens and see this more clearly. But what you're looking at is South Main Street, as you can see here, and East William is on the left and Liberty is on the right. And so this gray strip down the middle is the concrete trolley track foundations that exist, and we've drawn this into scale based on our as-built drawings. So you can see that the trolley track foundations are taking up, fully a third or more of the existing paved area of South Main Street, and they're covered over with asphalt. So what you can kind of make out here is this blue line. This blue line is the proposed water main that we're going to build, or the location of the proposed water main. So it runs in a relatively straight and consistent line from William through Liberty. And then we're going to replace the water main on Liberty east and west far enough to stay out of the intersection in the future. So this dimension here is about 150 feet. We don't quite go to the alley on either side, east or west. So we're kind of gonna, this is basically at the center, at the edge of the center left turn lane in approximate location on that east side of the street. If you could go to the next slide, please, Heather. So again, in this slide, here's again South Main Street. Here's Liberty now on the left and Washington on the right. So again, our water main it is staying in the same spot. It's running in a straight line until we get to the Washington intersection. Then there's some existing utilities that cause us to need to move over and get to the westerly side of the street. And again, it's at this scale, you can't really see, but there is a tremendous number of existing utilities in the East Washington, South Main Street intersection. So we are literally having to thread the needle with this pipe in between existing manholes and other obstructions. Our old record drawings indicate that there's an abandoned cistern in the middle of the intersection that, we're probably going to have to dig some test holes in here as the work gets started to figure out what is really here, what exists, and how can we actually achieve this. But again, on Washington, we're going in approximately the same distance west and a little less of a distance east to tie the new water main into the existing. So we have, again, proper 12-inch water service through the entire Main Street corridor here. Next slide. Then here again, we pick up at Washington is on our left, Huron is on the right. So we maintain our planned alignment underneath the trolley tracks, because there's an existing gas main and there's a sanitary sewer on the other side of the road that we have to stay 10 feet away from the sanitary sewer. So this causes us basically to be almost under the middle of the trolley tracks, the trolley track foundations, excuse me. So we will kind of continue in that straight line till we get to Huron. Then we're going to have to veer even further to the west to get across Huron Street to miss some existing utilities and to put ourselves in a location where we can minimize impacts to the traffic on North Main Street as we cross and as we build our water main along that westerly side of the road. And then we finally cross over to the street and tie into the existing water main over, I don't know, this is about 125 feet or so north of Huron Street. And then in a similar manner, we will be extending the water main about 150 feet or so west and east of Huron Street in order to, again, avoid any future utility work or avoid utility work for the foreseeable future in the Huron Main Street intersection. And again, I would just point out, just for this, for an interesting fact, the trolley track foundations continue through the Huron Street intersection. This was a double tracked area. This was a single track north of Main, and then you can see where the trolley tracks extended up Huron to the west and kind of curved in and through. So these trolley tracks these foundations kind of follow us through the duration of the project or throughout the limits of the project. So now here we're to the meat of the presentation, construction staging. So we've kind of looked at this, we've thought about this, and we think there's basically two general ways to build this project, and we'll kind of go through these kind of briefly here. So the first and probably most practical way to do this is to kind of build the project in segments. So in this, what we're referring to as concept one, stage one, we would close Main Street to traffic from William to probably, this limit would probably actually extend a little farther north, probably to not quite Liberty, maybe someplace around here where it says street and Main Street, probably up into this area. We'd close the street down completely, and we would build the water main from William to north of Liberty, and we would construct the water main probably in the Liberty Street intersection as well, and into this area. We would get that work completed, and then we would reopen this to traffic, and then we would move on to stage two. And one of the things that I would point out is what we would do is we would, when we would close this road, or when we would close this segment of South Main Street, we would detour southbound Main Street traffic down Liberty, over to Ashley, down Ashley to William, back along William to South Main Street. And for northbound South Main Street, we would divert traffic eastbound along William to 4th, up 4th to Liberty, and then back up Liberty to Main Street. And we would get you back on Main Street, between Washington and Huron. Also, traffic along Washington would be able to cross unimpeded in an east-west fashion. What this would allow us to do is maintain as much circulation in and around the heart of the downtown as we could.
Mike, we have a question related to that. Sandra, you should be able to unmute yourself and go ahead.
Okay, got it. Did you guys find out, is the DDA and that 4th detour, 4th Ave, I've heard that the DDA is moving forward with their work on 4th. Is that, do you know if have you had that discussion with them? Is that happening? Do we know that, or?
I have reached out to Amber, I don't know, a month or so ago, and I did not get a strong sense from them that their work would be occurring at this time.
Okay.
I've also spoken with the Housing Commission, who is working, they expect to be working on a project on the Y lot, and also at the surface parking lot next to Palio. And so we've talked with Jen Hall, and I think his name is Michael Johnson from Smith Group. And I met with them, and they had indicated that they would be attending this meeting tonight, but apparently they had some other plans. But I think our work is kind of compatible with theirs. At this level, they didn't really they don't really understand exactly what their projects are going to look like. And so we will in the next many days kind of reach back out. I think it's a good thing for us to reach back out to Amber and the DDA and the Housing Commission to kind of see how their plans are evolving and how their work is coming along. But to date, we didn't really see or hear much information or much concern from them about this.
Okay, because I know right now with the multiple projects, like I do hear a lot of stress from businesses with Ashley closed on top of over on 4th, you know, further down.
Yeah,
Anyway, it just, yeah, something to be aware of. And I just know that there's a lot of stressors when a lot of things start getting shut down. So,
absolutely.
anyway. Okay, go on. Sorry.
We totally agree. And so Carmel, you know, in our meeting summary, can you please make sure that we're clear, you know, that, you know, we need to reach back out to Amber and the DDA and whatnot and continue to affirm, you know, our project's existence and what are they doing, and, you know, work to coordinate these, make sure that we're on top of coordinating these schedules and these projects.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you go to concept 1, stage 2, please, Heather?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, and so this is the next step. So as I said before, I really expect that our work on Main Street in stage 1 would extend probably up to somewhere the word street and Main Street up in here. And then we would finish this block between Huron and south of Washington in that next stage. Now, one thing that I kind of intimated but didn't come out and say is, as our project is working in the Main and Huron intersection, and as our project is working in the William and Main intersection, we will definitely be maintaining traffic through. The road is wider, there's less obstruction, and we will definitely be doing the work in a way that will allow traffic through those intersections as part of our construction. And so when we get into this stage of the work, with this concept, if we utilize it, again, southbound Main Street would be detoured westbound along Huron to Ashley, left or southbound on Ashley to Liberty, and then they can either continue south on Ashley or turn left and go eastbound on Liberty to Main and rejoin Main Street at Liberty. And in a similar fashion, northbound Main Street traffic would come up South Main Street, turn right or eastbound on Liberty, turn left or northbound onto 4th, take 4th up to Huron, and of course you could continue straight, or you could turn left and get on to Huron and then rejoin South Main or rejoin North Main Street. So what are some of the pros and cons associated with this stage or this concept 1 that we've created? So talking about some of the pros first, I think a pro of this is only one section of Main Street would be under construction at a time, and on-street parking and vehicular traffic would remain accessible for businesses in the unaffected areas. Traffic traveling into / out of the downtown would be maintained via either Washington or Liberty. This is likely easier to work around special events. So for example, if we're working in smaller pieces, we can get done faster. It will allow us, I think, better flexibility to ensure that we can be done by Art Fair, and then we can be done after. So once Art Fair is done, then we could start on the next subsequent phase and be done by football. This allows for more areas along South Main Street that to be open for business. And this is kind of our last bullet point, but I think it's quite frankly maybe the most important one, is that emergency access is easier and more effectively maintained with this kind of segmented approach. So what are some of the drawbacks or cons associated with this? So one of the things, like if we're working in various stages and various, configurations, there's a possibility for driver confusion. What's open and what's closed. Oh, I didn't see that notice. I didn't know about that. Oh, I never heard that. So, driver confusion is a possibility. There'll be some additional time for setting up and taking down the work zones. If we're working in pieces, there's kind of startup and, kind of winding down time associated with that. And then if you do it in pieces, it just naturally takes a little longer because you can't kind of work on everything at once. And again, we'll talk more about durations in an upcoming slide, but I think a drawback is a somewhat longer construction duration. So here's the other primary concept that we think. So we're calling this concept 2. And again, concept 1 really doesn't have more favor than concept 2. They're just, it's a naming convention. And this concept is quite frankly fairly straightforward as it looks. So we would close Main Street at William. We'd close Main Street at Huron. We'd basically work from one end to the road to the other. Both Washington and Liberty would be closed to vehicular traffic in the work areas. Again, we would be maintaining pedestrian access. And again, can't stress that enough. We'll maintain pedestrian access at all times during this work. So this concept is pretty straightforward. We just basically shut it down and we get to work. We start at one end and we work our way to the other. And that's really, there's not a lot more to say than that. Let me describe the detours though a little bit. So in a similar manner to concept 1, southbound traffic would be detoured along westbound Huron to Ashley, down Ashley to William, and then eastbound William back to Main Street. And in a similar manner, northbound South Main traffic would be detoured eastbound on East William, northbound on 4th up to Huron, and then westbound on Huron to North Main Street again. And of course, Liberty and Washington, would be open and accessible up to the construction areas on either side of South Main Street. So for example, you'd be able to access the 4th and Washington parking structure, or you'd be able to access the 4th and William parking structure. The access to those areas will clearly be maintained. Next slide, please, Heather. So what are some of the pros and cons associated with concept 2? So I think a pro or a positive is the driver's expectations are consistent and they'd be set up through the duration of the project and it would stay that way. So that has some benefits. I think we would realize a somewhat faster construction time. Not a great reduction. We're not talking about cutting the project duration in half, but there's probably a couple less weeks worth of time. A pro also, or a positive, is that the construction staging is just simpler. There's more room available for working and there's more place to store materials and equipment, which will help the contractor and help expedite the work. And then a final positive of this is when it's done, there'll be, kind of quote unquote seamless construction. It'll all be done at once. There won't be it won't be all kind of taken apart in pieces and put back together in pieces. So it's kind of like we refer to it, or I refer to it, as a seamless construction. But what are some of the cons or some of the negatives? Well, emergency vehicle access will definitely be more difficult to maintain because of the limited access. Vehicular circulation within the downtown would be restricted due to the closures of the Liberty and Washington intersections for the duration of the project. So we have internal concerns about that, we view that as a fairly significant con. Vehicular access to businesses and on-street parking isn't accessible for longer durations. Larger sections of South Main Street would be under construction for longer periods of time, and there'd be more apparent disruption. And then also, with a project that's, 15 or 1600 feet long, there will definitely be periods of perceived inactivity in the work due to necessary construction sequences. So for example, once we get the water main installed near the Main and East William intersection, and as we're kind of working our way north, it'll probably be 3 or 4 weeks by the time that water main is installed. So there'll be, 3 or 4 weeks where it might look like nothing is happening because, we have to pressure test the water main, then it has to pass a back T test. Then we can start kind of restoring over top of it. So there'll definitely be periods where it won't look like anything is going on. And my experience has been in the past that makes people nervous because they don't really think that the project is being worked on properly. Next slide, please.
Sorry, backward.
Okay. Are there any questions about what we've covered so far? I've said a lot, we've covered a lot of ground, no pun intended. Just wondering if, again, anybody has any questions or concerns so far?
I guess when you find out all this trolley craziness, that's crazy that all that stuff is under there.
Yeah.
I guess you'll just keep on top with the website about I guess if that extend, I would imagine that would extend the timeline if you have to remove all that stuff.
Yeah, it would. I don't think it's going to add, a lot of time to the construction duration, Sandra, but I bet you it's going to take, if we decide to take, let's just say, for example, worst case, I don't know if it's worst case scenario or best case scenario. I might view it as best case scenario, but if we decide to take out the entirety of the trolley track foundations and, we're working in, say, segments, let's just say, Vaughn and I have kind of talked about this and kind of noodled this over, and for what we know about the design so far, I suspect that it would probably take a good contractor about a week or 10 days to break that stuff up, get it in small enough pieces that's workable, get it in the back of a truck and haul it off site. So, and there's concrete, we know that there's concrete pavement out there anyhow. So there was, concrete pavement that needs to be removed. So I think, in round terms, I think, we're talking about adding, maybe a week or 10 calendar days of work to each kind of stage of the construction. So I think it's absorbable in the construction, in the planned construction.
Okay,
So
not bad.
yeah, I think, and I think, we'll just get rid of it once and for all. So, if there is any future work, it'll make it easier for the people that come after us, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
If that's positive or not. So I talked a little earlier about, excuse me. Are there any other questions or concerns?
I don't see any hands raised or anything coming through the Q&A. So
All right, well, good. Okay, so I talked a little earlier about working in the South Main Street Huron Street intersection. So just going over that relatively briefly, here's a kind of an aerial photograph of the Main Street going, left and right across the drawing, and Huron going from top to bottom or east to west across the drawing in, using our cardinal directions with the compass. So what we would do is we would work about to the center line of the main Huron intersection, and we'd get the water main, about to this center line. And we would be maintaining east and west one lane of traffic in each direction on Huron Street. And we would allow left and right turns from Main Street onto Huron. We'd get our construction again about to the center line or just short of the center line. And then we would switch to stage 2. So if you could go to the next slide, Heather. And then stage 2 would allow us basically to work. If you remember, the blue line was located up here in this area. And this, this yellow area would obviously extend further, further south or further to the north in order to allow us to do our work. But what we would do is we would shift vehicular traffic to the east side of the road. We'd be allowing northbound traffic out of the area and southbound traffic into the area. You could turn left or right onto Huron. And then from here on, you would be able to turn, like say, for example, if you were westbound, you could turn right onto northbound Main Street. Or if you were eastbound, you'd be able to turn left onto northbound Main Street. The one thing that I would say is if you are a car traveling southbound and you want to turn right, you'll find that this turn will be a little tight in here because of the radius. So, we'll have to kind of polish up our maintenance of traffic drawings a little bit to see if it's maybe possible to kind of cut this corner off a little bit or what we can do to improve this turning radius. But you'll basically be able to travel east and west, north and south through the intersection in what we would refer to as stage 2. And then finally, stage 3. So stage 3 is really working in this area that's, just to the right edge of the drawing where we're now crossing back across South Main Street and we get to tie into the existing pipe. So again, maintaining north and southbound traffic. We would be maintaining east and west traffic. And quite frankly, I think with this drawing, even though it shows Main Street being closed here, I believe by the time we get to this stage, I think we would find that this portion of Main Street would be reopened to vehicular traffic. So again, we'll study this in subsequent design studies and design exercise. But I think we would probably find ourselves being able to maintain traffic on Main Street south of Huron. Next slide. And then in a similar fashion, this is the construction staging for the Main and William intersection. So the existing water main is about in line with the raised curbed areas of the bicycle track that was recently built. So we'd be working in this area. We'd be working in this area to get the water main in and through the intersection. And then once we got that done, we would be able to kind of repave and repair some of this area of the road to reopen the road to one lane in each direction, east and west through the intersection. And then again, if you're on Main Street, you'd be able to, in this state, because of the reduced width of the road, you'd only be able to turn right and go eastbound onto eastbound William. So this would be our staged construction approach to the William South Main Street intersection. So how long will it take to do all this? You're probably wondering. And that's a great question. So based on what we know about the design and what we know about the work, so we are currently estimating to work on the piece of Main Street, whether we use concept 1 or concept 2, it'll probably take us about 19 weeks from start to finish for the portion from East William to just south of Huron Street on South Main Street. And that's broken into it'll probably take us for all of that area about 2.5 weeks to get rid of all the pavement, trolley track foundations, all the other things that are in our way. There's about 2,100 lineal feet of water main to install. So we think that'll take about 5 weeks to get that pipe in the ground. We think with the phased approach, or even if we build it all at once, it'll probably take about 2 weeks to complete the pressure and the bacteriological testing for those segments. And I'm sure the contractor will elect to break that up into segments regardless. But we're kind of conservatively estimating about 2 weeks for that back T testing. Hopefully, if everything went well, it would be less. But again, it's kind of a conservative estimate at this point. To do water service transfer connections and tie-ins, we think there's about 2 weeks worth of work to get the shutdowns done, to make the connections on Liberty east and west, on Washington east and west, at William, transfer everybody's water services. There's about 2 weeks worth of work in there. And then we think it'll take about 6 to 6.5 weeks worth of work to basically rebuild the road. Because if we do have to take the trolley track foundations out, we're in essence going to be basically reconstructing Main Street. So if we end up, the good news about taking out the trolley track foundations is we would probably in essence end up with a brand new reconstructed roadway that would have at least a 20-year design life on it. So again, there are some benefits of dealing with the trolley tracks now. And then we think finally it would take about a week to repave the road, to paint the paint stripes in there, make sure all the traffic signals are reprogrammed and refunctioning, and we have all the traffic signal sensor pucks in and all that other kind of stuff. So we think that'd be about a week's worth of work to get everything buttoned up and ready to go. And so we think that our total estimated duration for this work, again, knowing what we know right now, is about 19 weeks. And 19 weeks is what, a little over 4 months, or it's maybe not quite 5 months. So we think if we get started in the end of February or early March, that we think this gives us the ability to be done probably around 4th of July or maybe just after 4th of July, which gives us about a week or 10 days or maybe a 2-week cushion before art fair to give us a little bit of float and a little bit of float in the schedule. So when unforeseen things happen, like we get a week of rain, or we get a freak snowstorm in March or April, or we run into the cistern in the main Washington intersection, and it kind of throws us for a loop, and it takes us a couple of days to redesign around it or whatever we're going to do. So this gives us some time to start early, be done probably around or shortly after 4th of July, and give ourselves some breathing room so we're not paving the road the day before art fair. And again, this is an estimated duration based on very preliminary plans. And so I don't mean to be too weaselly or too non-committal, but again, this is a very, this is a first cut view at the schedule. I think it's a reasonable schedule. I think it's appropriate for this level of plan development. But again, it's our schedule. So please don't say Mike Nearing promised 19 weeks like 3 months from now. Okay, then the next slide, please, Heather. So then here, so what our kind of current vision is we think that this, with concept 1 or concept 2, we basically can get from William to just south of Huron done before art fair, starting early, late in the winter, early in the spring, however you want to describe that, working up to or approximately just before art fair, get that all done, get it all paved, get it all fully open, 100% completed, let art fair transpire, and then after art fair, jump in and do the section of water main across the Huron intersection, up North Main and east and west on Huron Street. And we think that'll take about 6 weeks. That'll get us just about to the first home football game. So, and that's broken into about a week and a half for installing pipe. There's about 600 feet of water main, about 1 week for testing, about, probably 3 or 4 days worth of time for service connection transfers and water main tie-ins. And then it'd probably take us about 2 weeks or so to get the road all put back together again, because At that point in time, we'd be talking about repairing a water main trench, not like full reconstruction. And then it'll take us a couple of days to pave, restripe, get everything all cleaned up, ready to go and opened up. And one thing I want to point out that I went over or I missed in that first slide about duration is we consider a work week to be 5 days during the week. Again, one of the other things that we heard is, people weren't really in love with working on Saturdays and on Sundays and things like that. And so a normal full week in construction is 5 days a week. And so our estimated durations and our kind of critical path scheduling, so to speak, is kind of assuming the contractor works 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, makes hay while the sun is shining, so to speak, and then goes away for the weekends, comes back the next Monday and is ready to go. So again, we think that this northerly phase of the project, or this northerly section of the project, would take about 6 weeks to complete. And again, there are, there's, thunderstorms happen, rain happens, utility conflicts happen. There are some other things that can come up. But again, all things considered, we think about 6 weeks for that section of work, which should get us to about the first home football Saturday in early September. Next slide, please. So, what do you want us to know? What's important to you? As I said, we're planning to perform this project starting sometime in early 2023. We don't have a definite start date. One of the drawbacks with starting too early is when it's cold and freezing, the work just isn't very productive. Let's be honest, you can't get a lot done when it's, 20 degrees outside. You have problems with the machinery doesn't like to work when it's really cold. People don't work very efficiently when it's cold. The backfill freezes. It's hard to get sand out of the gravel pits and the sand pits. It's just kind of tough to work. So there's definitely a very fine line, I think, or a fine line between, kind of starting at the right time of the year where we're productive and we're working, not just occupying Main Street, waiting for the next snowstorm to melt so we can get back out there. So again, fine line, something that we're very seriously studying and thinking about. We'll be talking with contractors about this as the design process progresses. And so I guess, I'd like to kind of almost conclude here with, is there anything that we missed that we should consider, or are there suggested tweaks or revisions that, you would make to these options, or that you think we should be thinking about? And so let us know. So next slide, please. So I guess, that leads into, do you have questions, concerns? What do you like? What don't you like? We're here for you. So I guess if there are any questions, we'll open it up and hear what people are concerned about.
Yeah, I'll just pause here. I see both Sandra and Tyler, you have your microphones on. So let's start with Tyler. We haven't heard from you yet. If you have a question or comment.
I'd just say the option for dual phase and construction of Main Street seems to be the most plausible option. I know you need to have that other option there, but is there whose interests are we trying to serve in doing the entire Main Street from that William to Huron? Is that for cost concerns? Is it for what I know you had your pros and cons listed there, but is that a cost concern issue?
Like, okay, so if I understand your question, like if we elect to go with concept 2, where we're working in the entire area at once, whose concerns are we looking at there?
Correct.
Yeah, well, our overarching concerns are the business concerns. Let's be honest about it. So as you said, that's kind of an option that's out there that has to be looked at. But what we're really, I think, I like to say this a lot because I think it's really true. It's our goal is to do projects for people, not to people. So really, I'm leaning, and not that, again, not that I'm the only voice or the key decision maker here, but I'm leaning towards the segmented construction because it gives us a lot more flexibility in a lot of different areas. So our overarching goal is to take care of the businesses and be mindful of their needs. So, so to answer your question directly, we did some polling, or actually Sandra did some polling, and there was, I don't know, I would guess it was like 60-40 about, let's just get it all done at once. And there was 60-40 that people were, the 60% was we want to work in phases. So I don't think anybody is really warmly embracing the do it all at once, the get her done scenario, as I like to call it, or the get her done concept. So I think we're leaning towards concept one, to be honest.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. Again, seems like we're at the end here, but just one voice in a sea of many. Dual phase would be our preference, and those being downtown, kind of understanding the construction process, and you hit a problem in one phase and it's not affecting that second phase,
Right.
and you kind of mentioned it. And if there's a holdup, or even just in due course you see an entire section not being worked on, people are wondering, hey, what's going on here? We could be open, yada yada yada. Yeah. So I really hands up on dual phase.
All right, well, good. Thank you very much. I appreciate your candid feedback, quite frankly. It's very helpful. And yeah, it's just very, very good. And so, one of the things that I think about is, what good is it to do a project if during the course of the project, we put three people out of business? I'm not really sure how that helps anybody. So, that's kind of one of the things that, we really think about, and we really want to make sure we're listening to. So thanks.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Then Sandra, did you have something that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I'll just echo what Tyler said. Yeah, and I think you guys know, I think the segmented one it feels so much less scary.
Yeah.
So I echo that. And then and I know Mike, in another email that we were going through with somebody from one of the businesses, signage, and I'm sorry if you answered this, but I was actually just in Lake Placid, New York, and they were redoing their water main, and I was like, oh, excited about it. Anyway, their signage was incredible, and I loved that where we stayed, their communication plan, the hotel told us what was happening and where to park and how to work around it. So I would be love to help with that, be a part of that. I just think the communication's so big, and we could get Destination Ann Arbor involved and such. So I guess when the time comes,
Right.
have that.
Absolutely.
Sandra, did you happen to get pictures of their signage?
Yes, it's a big
You did?
head. Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
send it.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
please share those with us, because, there's lots of great ideas out there. So, share those, tomorrow or the next day or whenever you get a chance, share those pictures with us and we can take a look at it, because again, always looking for a better idea, always looking for another idea. Again, with a project like this, it's kind of trite to say, but, and there is such a thing as too much signing, but, you got to try hard to put too many signs out there. So, yeah, share with us, we're always open to good ideas. And yes, we will, in our earlier presentation, we talked about, portable changeable message signs and some other stuff like that. And on Main Street, quite frankly, they're really hard to cite because those message boards are about 11 feet wide. But, we can work to like, buy a parking space for a couple of months from the DDA or whatever. And in terms of the communication plan, that's, I think, one of the reasons why we're here today talking about this, because it gives us so much time to make sure that we're reaching out to you. And I've told you this, privately several times, that you're such a incredible ally, and we're so blessed to have you on here. And so we look forward to your future coordination and cooperation. And, I think if we're all kind of working together and if we're all trying hard, I think we have the opportunity to be very successful. So I think really we're our own limiting factor.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And yeah, and this is great. Thank you so much for like really listening and the art fair and doing the segment. Like, I am grateful in all your outreach. So kudos to you all. So thanks.
Yeah, well, good. It's nice to hear that people appreciate our efforts, because quite frankly, we kind of hear a lot of people who don't appreciate our efforts. So thank you. You're very kind. Okay, any other questions or concerns? Again, we're here for you.
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay.
But, I'm sure Mike will go over this, but you're welcome to reach out to the project team after this as well, if anything comes to you after the meeting that you want to
Yeah,
share.
so I think, can you go to the next step slide?
Yeah,
I think that
definitely.
kind of gets, so next steps. So again, you can contact me with any questions or comments. Again, here's my email address, mneering@a2gov.org. This is my phone number. I'd like to think I'm pretty good at responding to emails and responding to phone calls. So if you call me, I will call you back. That's a guarantee. Also, I can't plug in this enough. You can stay tuned if you go to the City of Ann Arbor website, a2gov.org/South Main Water Main. That's our project webpage. So when we have new, so we're kind of in the early design phase, so there's not a lot of updates. But as the design is coming to a completion, as we start defining construction durations and what stage is going to be happening and when the project is going to start, all that information will be there. So South Main Water Main is our tiny URL, and definitely make friends with that. That is that will be a treasure trove of information in the future. And then we did some walk and talks earlier in the spring, and those were lightly attended. But if people are interested, Sandra, if people are interested or have other questions, they can definitely reach out to us. And we would definitely be willing to meet out there and talk through specific concerns about this, that, or the other thing if needed, or we could do it by email or phone or however. So again, our job is to kind of be there for folks to kind of help them understand this project.
Okay.
And so I have one other piece of information that I need to share with everyone, and that is after some soul searching and some thinking about it, I've decided to kind of end my career at the city. And so effective July 23rd of this year, I'll be retiring, and I'll no longer be with the city. And so again, it's been my pleasure to work with all you folks on this, and it's been a good project. And so what we will do is Chris Wall with Wade Trim is also participating in this meeting. And Chris is a good guy who's worked on various city projects for several years. And so we will set up a very well done transition plan, and we will share Chris's contact information. And over the course of the next month or so, I will be working with Chris, and I'll be kind of introducing him to folks, and we'll get his name out there and his face out there. And so I'm confident Chris will take over and we'll kind of create a seamless transition. And but yeah, it's effective July 23rd. That'll be my last day with the city. and I will miss it. But I leave knowing that this project and others are in good hands. So I guess with that, that's kind of the end of this meeting. If anybody has any other questions or concerns, please let us know. But again, it's, we're here to help. We're here for you. And yeah, thanks for attending. Appreciate it.
Mike, you're a great asset to the city. You're going to be sorely missed.
You're so kind. Your check is in the mail, Chris. Check's in the mail, buddy. All right.
Sandra,
So,
did you have something more? I see
I
that.
just said, don't go. I mean, Chris,
I know.
look forward to working with you, but yeah, Mike, you've been awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I try, and I'm glad you've appreciated my efforts so far. So I'll keep doing my level best till July 23rd. And again, I leave knowing that I really do believe the project is as good a hands as it can be in. So I think that, and I'm not just saying that to be nice. And as Vaughn and others know me, they would know I would never just say that just to be nice. So again, I think the project's in good hands, and I do feel good. So I appreciate all your kind thoughts and words. So I guess with that, again, unless anybody else has anything, I guess we can kind of wrap this up. Thanks for participating. Thanks for coming, Tyler. I definitely appreciate it. Thanks, Sandra, for all your help and all your assistance. Again, you've been a tremendous ally, and we very much appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All
thank
right.
you both.
Have a good night.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Appreciate it.
Everybody have
See
a
you
good
guys.
night.
Happy retirement,
Thank
Michael.
you.
Yeah, thanks. See you guys. Bye.
See ya.
Take care.